which I'd always had a mild interest in. He's what's called a cachet artist. And a lot of you may not know exactly what a cachet artist is or what a cachet artist does. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to record some of these facts for posterity by sitting down and having a fireside chat with him and finding out some of these answers. Dad, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, sure. I started as a stamp collector as a young boy when I was about 12 years old. I came from Copenhagen, Denmark, and we lived northwest side of Chicago. A friend of my father's came over with a newspaper, an old newspaper, and inside the newspaper were several hundred stamps, and that got me interested in collecting stamps. Years later, I was one of the organizers of the Gateway Philatelic Society, a very large stamp club on the northwest side of Chicago. We met once a month at the Jefferson Park Field House, and there I noticed that some of the members were buying were buying cachet envelopes, which were printed in black and white, and I thought that it might be a good idea to do something different, maybe add color to them. So I became known as a pioneer in designing cachets on first day covers in colors. This example of the very first one I made was to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the statehood of Maryland. This is Lord Baltimore, known as George Calvert. He was the first governor of Maryland. What's interesting about making these cachets is that you have to do some research. You either go to the library or you consult history books. Fortunately, I have two old history books that I used when I was in grammar school. My history book was published in 1915, and at that time all the illustrations in the history book were pen and ink drawings because photo engraving process had not yet been perfected. So I made a pen and ink drawing of Lord Baltimore from the old history book, and then I colored it and put a bit of information here about him and about Baltimore, and that is the brief history of the creation of a cachet for a first day cover. You got any other questions, Jim?
Sure. How did you become so good at this? Were you an artist by trade, or a writer? Were you a writer?
I had a flair for drawing. When I was a kid, my favorite drawing was horses. I loved horses. Every kid in my youth was a lover of horses, so it seemed. And so then later on, when we came to Chicago, I developed a flair for writing. I wrote articles for a magazine called The Lone Scout, which later on was merged with the Boy Scouts. And there I won a number of merit medals for writing. So the combination of artwork and writing came in handy for the creation of first day covers.
How many people do this kind of thing? Do you have any idea?
There's probably somewhere around 50 or 75 so-called cachet artists. And most of us are members of the American First Day Cover Society, which has conventions every year. Your mother and I, we were fortunate to be invited to one of the big ones in Arlington, Virginia, where I was honored, and I was one of the principal speakers at one of the meetings.
Well, how do you get ideas for when obviously the post office issues a stamp, and then you have to work with that? How do you get an idea for doing the historical research, or where do you get your ideas from?
The ideas pretty much come. They automatically come. They're made for you, you might say. the stamp creates the idea, or the person that's commemorated on the stamp. You look him up in the encyclopedia, or you go to the library or history book, and it all kind of gels together. A lot of people think it's difficult to come up with an idea for a first day cover. For me, it was very easy, because all the elements contribute to making the cachet.
Well, what do you consider your greatest attribute? That you're an artist, a writer, or a historian?
I think it's a combination of all three.
They all help a little bit
I think they
to
do.
pull it all
Yeah.
together. Well, it's certainly very interesting. When did you make your first cachet?
The first cachet is this one, made in 1934.
1934. Oh, that's
Yeah.
quite a while. Is that one of the oldest cachets
That's
ever?
that's one of the oldest. This one is listed in the. We have a catalog, which is put out by a publishing house, and this cachet is illustrated in that catalog.
Yeah.
And it has a value of $250.
Well, I understand you were doing this. You'd started the hobby once, and you were doing it during the Depression to earn some extra money. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the Depression gave me a lot of time to turn out these things, because to make a cachet like this by hand, there's probably an hour or 2 hours work involved.
Very labor intensive.
Right. And I probably made 2 dozen of these.
Do other artists spend that much time making?
A lot of them do. But later on, I got tired of spending so much time, because I'm basically impatient. So I bought a printing press.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll have to take a look at that a little later. How much were the cachets that you were making during the Depression selling for?
Oh gosh, they were selling for 10-15 cents a piece.
That was pretty big money back then, I imagine.
It was.
And what are those worth now these days? Do you have any idea?
Well, the average first day cover with a cachet today sells for around $2.50, $3. My price is $5.
That's pretty high, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It must be the quality of the work, or the labor.
I have to be immodest and say it's because of the quality.
The quality. Well, that's.
I hope you buy that idea.
Sure. Why not? Can we take a look at some of the other ones you've got here?
Sure. Now these are miniature.
Just do one at a time.
These are miniature watercolors in connection with the national park stamps that were issued also in 1934.
Was this one of the first airmails?
Yeah. No, airmails go back to earlier than that. They go back to about 1924.
Was that one of the first airmails that you did?
Yeah, that was one of the. I made about a dozen of these sets, and they're extremely rare.
Now tell us.
Even your mother helped me with these. Well, what I did, I made a template. You know what a template is?
Yep.
And laid it down on the envelope and made a rough pencil outline. Then I would instruct your mother to do all the blue that was on here. We had these envelopes laid out on the tables and on the floor and on tables. She would do all the blue. I would mix the colors. She would do all the blue. I would do the red. So we had a production line going. Then when that was all done, then I would go over each individual and kind of dial it up a little bit more. For instance, put some highlights in.
Like that tree there?
Like the tree. She didn't do that. I would put in the tree, and I would put in highlights. And where the sky is blue, I would put in a few clouds. And where there's water, I would put in little dashes of white to indicate waves.
Good. I noticed over the years that your style and your production methods seem to have changed. Where these are mostly straight artwork, I noticed in later years where you became more people-oriented.
Right. This is a good example of what let's take these down. this one here is a good example of my more modern. You see, I was out of this hobby for about 40 years.
40 years you were out of the hobby?
Yeah, because I started my own business in 1940, and I had to work 18, 20 hours a day to make a living, so I could support you in the style to which you are entitled.
Well, that's good. That seemed to work. That seemed to work
so
out
I gave up this hobby, and I didn't resume it until about 1978, when I retired from my business.
Uh-huh.
So then I decided that these cachets, they should be more modern and they should be more informative.
Uh-huh.
Instead of a pretty picture, they should also tell a story. And one of my favorites is this one. This one was put out by the government to fight alcoholism. And the reason I like this one is because one of these covers came to the attention of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Oh, really?
And they wrote me a marvelous letter.
What'd they say?
They said, "We congratulate you on this design in which you, in very few words, tell us that alcoholism is a disease that can be cured."
Can you read that for us?
Sure.
Good, because I can't.
It says in big type, alcoholism. A chronic disease, alcoholism has affected the lives of thousands, breaking up homes, loss of jobs, deterioration of health. Alcoholism can be treated. Over 1 million men and women in the USA have recovered by participating in the successful programs of such organizations as Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's signed Torkel Gundel. And here shows a man who is drinking too much. There's a whiskey bottle with the whiskey pouring out, and there is a picture of his little girl.
Is this the one that, how did you get the color brown? Is that the one that I remember?
That's watercolor.
Oh, I thought that was the one you did with coffee. Didn't you?
I did some later ones with coffee.
Okay.
But this is yellow watercolor, and blue on his nightgown.
What are some of your other favorite ones that you have there?
Well, I don't think I've got any others here.
Okay.
Wait a minute, maybe I do.
Just cut first. Let's take some of this. The post office puts out a whole array of different first aid covers. They put them out for Christmas and any other celebration. And how does the post office decide what they want to honor or celebrate by putting out these?
The post office has what is called a stamp advisory committee. This is a group of a dozen men or so who scrutinize the mail that they get from all kinds of organizations: the Salvation Army, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the bakers, the chicken raisers, and all kinds of organizations who want to promote their hobby, business, or industry by having the post office come out with what we call a commemorative stamp. And so there are a lot of them.
Well, after the post office comes out with these, how do you select, what criteria do you use to select among this vast array that they put out?
I only select what I feel is of interest to me personally.
Well, what kinds of things are interesting in you?
Anything that has to do with sport, anything that has to do with geography and history. That's the only thing I'm interested in. They put out stamps for baby buggies and cabooses and things like that. I don't care about that. I'm only interested in people and important historical events.
You've been in this hobby for quite some time. What kind of people are involved in this hobby?
All kinds of people, men and women. What I find it fascinating is that I have made a lot of friends all over the country. I've never met these people, but they write me letters, they send me checks, and I send them the covers, and I acknowledge every order with a personal letter. And they send me Christmas cards, and it's just like one big happy family.
Do you recommend this this kind of a hobby for any?
Absolutely, especially the young people, because it teaches history and geography. You'd be surprised how many people, even students in school, who think that Denmark is the capital of England.
You mean it's not?
No. They're dumb.
What is the capital?
Of Denmark?
Yeah.
Sweden.
Oh, of course. How foolish of me.
Everybody knows that.
How about showing us a couple more of your favorite first aid covers?
All right. This one I got a big kick out of because it's a first aid cover for the Love stamp, and this is your dog. This is Digger.
Digger, huh?
Yeah, where's Digger?
There he is.
Can we show Digger?
Sure.
Digger, come here. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on, Digger. Come on over here. Come on over here.
That dog.
He doesn't want, anyway, that's Digger on this stamp. And what it says underneath is important. Underneath here it says, no love greater than the love of a boy for his dog.
How true, how true. Oh.
Now the one, oh, now you're coming over. Well, come on over. Here's Digger. Here's Digger. Show him the cover. Show Digger the cover.
Most people don't realize when we talked about all kinds of people collecting first aid covers, this is the only dog that I know that gets first aid covers and has his own first aid cover collection.
Right.
Isn't that right, Digger? He has his own album at home of first aid covers. I don't know if the mailman realizes when he delivers them that he's delivering mail to a dog. What are some of your other?
Here's one that I got a big kick out of.
Which one is
this year? The Girl Scouts put out a commemorative stamp, and the Girl Scout organization, the officials, they got greedy. They wanted to make a lot of money, so they sent out a letter to cachet makers like me. Telling me that I could not design a cachet using a picture of a Girl Scout. I couldn't even use the name Girl Scout because it's copyrighted. I couldn't show any of the medals or insignias that the Girl Scouts use. So I figured, well, the hell with them. So I got out this one here, which doesn't say anything, doesn't mention Girl Scouts, doesn't show a Girl Scout in uniform. It simply says 75th Anniversary National Organization for Girls. And then I blast, in this text here, I blast the hell out of the Girl Scouts. And this was proved so popular that it was illustrated and written up in the largest stamp magazine called Lynn Stamp News. And here it is illustrated in black and white. Then later on, I decided, well, I'm going to defy the Girl Scouts. I'm going to put out one that gives the names Girl Scouts, and I also show the Girl Scout founder, the gal from South Carolina, or was she from Georgia? I can't think of her name now. Oh, Juliet Gordon Lowe. She's from Savannah, Georgia. And she was the organizer of the Girl Scouts, patterned very much after the organization of the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts were organized in 1910. And the Girl Scouts about 1915.
Have they sued yet?
They haven't sued me yet.
You expect?
They lost my address.
Have you been in contact with your lawyer?
Not lately. But the Girl Scouts, they were blasted in the general press as well as the philatelic press. They were embarrassed to beat the band. It didn't do any good for their public relations.
What else? What other interesting ones do you have there?
Well, I got this album
Oh, is this an album of what?
This is the way cover collectors store their covers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty.
If they want to show them to their friends, here they all are. These are all put out last year and the year before. This is for the stamp collector, and this one here is Jim Thorpe.
Yep.
And
how many original different cachets do you think you've done?
I've probably done in the neighborhood of 300.
300.
Yeah. And I have turned out on combination of hand-drawn like these,
yeah,
and those that I turn out on my printing press. I have probably turned out 300,000 cachets.
300,000.
300,000 cachets in a period of 40 years.
What's the most that you've done? The most reproductions of one issue?
Maybe 100.
Maybe 100. So a very, very limited production.
Oh no, I got to take that back. Back during the Depression, I was selling cachet envelopes,
yeah,
not covers,
yeah,
to dealers and collectors.
Yeah.
And I sometimes ran off 2,000 envelopes of one design.
But normally
2,000 envelopes of one design.
Normally you run 175.
Now that I have retired and only sell to a few select collectors, I run off about 100.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
A few years ago, Hal Ansing put together an exhibit of some of your work and documented this collection in sort of a biography and a documentary of this exhibit. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. I might mention that Hal Ansing, a very good friend of mine, lives in Waukegan, and he is a director of the American First Day Cover Society, which is an organization of 5,000 members. About 3 years ago, he got the idea of taking a collection of my early covers as well as my later covers and put them together in an exhibit which he showed at 8 or 10 shows, stamp shows around the country. And this is the way the exhibit is put together. Each one of these pages in the exhibit, there are about 8 of these pages in a large glass frame, and he has 5 frames. I don't know if you can get a picture of this part here. It's kind of small, but that's the way the exhibits look at a stamp show. And he starts out with my name here. Here I am, the Great Dane in the doghouse. Torkel Gundel, the cachet artist. He talks about where I was born and when I was born. He goes into my career as a youth when I was a member of the Lone Scouts, and I was also assistant editor of the magazine. And then he goes into some of the amateur publications that I published at the time, Prairie Scout and Youth Magazine. And then he gets into the first day covers. This is the first day covers, but it has no cachet except my corner address. This is an early picture of me taken back in about 30 years ago. Then he gets into some of the novelty covers that I prepared. This is a cover showing the legalization of beer in 1933. I had quite a few novelty covers. Now he gets into the real first day covers. This is the first one I made of Lord Baltimore commemorating the statehood of Maryland back in 1934. You saw this in some of the early shots that we took. The rest of it are pretty much covers from way back in 1933, 34, 35, and then we go back into the more modern covers. This is an airmail cover. Back here we have more modern covers. This is a Virginia Dare. This is the Here is Northwest Territory cover.
I noticed in the beginning he listed all the awards that he'd won.
Oh yes, I want to mention the awards.
Yeah.
This sheet here shows the awards. The awards were given to him. This is the. Let me just look at it this way. He wherever he exhibited, he either got first, second, or third award. This was the Grandy Award at the Columbia, South Carolina show, and then he got the Open Class Award. He got the Silver Award at Wisconsin. At Chicago, the big Compex show in Chicago, he got the Grandy Award, the Silver Award, and the most popular exhibit, which was quite an achievement. He also got an award at La Crosse, Wisconsin, at Baltimore, Maryland, and at Boston, Massachusetts, Lubbock, Texas, and Denver, Colorado. And this is what some of the awards look like. Now, some of them were plaques and others were ribbons. This happens to be a ribbon. He has the plaques that he won hanging on the wall in his den at home.
Yeah, that's real nice. That's very impressive.
He did a marvelous job.
He made several copies of this book, of which
he made about a half a dozen copies, and I think you have one of them.
Yes, I do. It's very nice commemorative of the exhibit. Exactly, could you go over exactly how you make the first day covers, the process that you go through in creating one of these works of art?
Yeah, well, like we said earlier, I researched the subject, consulting history books, encyclopedia, and other publications, and then I type out the text and I edit the text pretty closely so as not to waste any words, because the space is limited on an envelope, and I want to get as much information as I can in fewest possible words. Now here's a typical one for the Maryland stamp that's coming out in January. You can see how big it's hand lettered. And here is another one which is coming out also in January for the Commemorative Stamp for the state of Massachusetts. It just so happens that in 1988 is an important year in history. A lot of our states are commemorating bicentennial statehoods. And so we've got about a half a dozen eastern states that are commemorating. Now there is the text, and here is the drawing that goes above the text. They go together like this.
Well, how do you turn these drawings into the printed part of the envelope?
These two drawings are sent to my engraver in Oklahoma City. And let me just. Here are the engravings that are made in Oklahoma City. As you can see, the artwork is large. And the engraver, he puts this in front of his camera, and then through a chemical process, he transfers the image of this onto this block, which is, we call it a zinc edging. A common name for it is it's a cut. Now this cut, I take this down in the basement, lock it up in my old press, put ink on the press, and then print this on the envelope. This is the upper part of the envelope, and this is the lower part. This is the text. This is the cut for the text. Each one is made separately. And that's how the cachet is printed.
I understand before you did the metal work, you used to use other materials to do your printing.
Yeah, I did what we call linoleum blocks. I would chisel it out the old-fashioned way. Some people call it woodcuts. With a linoleum knife. And the reason I did that was because back in the Depression days, I couldn't afford to buy these zinc etchings, so I cut the cachet in linoleum blocks.
This is still a fairly old-fashioned printing process now,
yes,
though.
It is. This process is out of date. There are only one or two engraving houses that make these for what we call hobby printers. I'm what you call a hobby printer. I
Okay.
have a very small press. From here, should we go downstairs and?
Yeah, I'd like to see how
the press
you
works?
actually do that. Let's go down and take a look at that.
All right. That's it, Jeff.
Yeah, this is the actual printing press where you print these things on?
Yes, this is an old press that I bought about 55 years ago for $40, and I recently learned that it was built in Boston. It's called the Gundel press. It was built in Boston in 1894, and I have had it for more than half of its active life. And I even used it when I started my advertising business. I printed envelopes and letterheads and business cards and things like that on it. So now I also use it for printing first day covers. Would you like to see how it's done?
Sure. Yeah.
I'll put some ink on here.
Okay. What is that? Is that the piece of wood that we saw?
This is the cut of the engraving.
Okay.
And that's locked up in this chase. They call it a chase.
It's like a metal frame, is what
It's
it is.
a metal frame. And first I put ink on here.
Okay.
As you can see, I have all different colors of ink. Yellow, red, black, blue, and white. And with all these primary colors, I can mix any color you want. If I want green, I mix yellow and blue. Now we're going to put ink on here. If you want to come over, you can get a closer shot, Jeff. So we turn this around. Now this is a foot power press. You see how it works? It works like an old-time sewing machine your grandmother had. Now you see that ink is getting distributed. This thing keeps turning, and these rollers, they pick up the ink, and when we get enough on there, then we can put the we can put the cut into
This flywheel is what keeps it going, right?
That's right. I can stop this on a dime. Or I can stop with my hand.
Ever get your fingers caught in there?
Not yet.
Okay.
I try not to do it. Okay, now we'll put this plate in here. Like that. Now we're ready to print. And here are the envelopes. We start off like this. The pins here are already set. We go over this a couple of times, make sure we get ink on this plate. There you are. That's the beginning of the cachet.
Pretty nice, pretty nice.
Now that's red.
Okay.
Later on, I will wash the plate and put maybe black ink or blue ink, and then we will print the text underneath. That's a separate cup.
Each time you change colors, you run the envelopes through a complete cycle.
That's right.
of this.
Yeah. I'll show you how I can go pretty fast with this, as you can see. This is now an obsolete method of printing. It's not done today. This is called the letterpress method of printing, but it is obsolete and too slow for our modern times in which we now live. But there you are. That's the beginning. I run off about 75 to 100 of these. Now, later on, I will print the text in black and blue. That's the end of this. Then we go upstairs and we hand color them.
Okay, let's go up and take a look at that.
The envelope that we just printed downstairs, we were downstairs, we printed the map of Georgia. Later on, I washed the press, washed the ink off the press, and then I put green ink on to print the title of this cachet, which says Georgia Bicentennial Statehood. Then I washed the press again, and I printed the black text. Now we're all through with the printing part. And this is now we get into the final stage of completing the cachet, and that is with hand coloring, so as to give it a touch of color here and there. For instance, right here, you can see I put in yellow color for background for the mat, and I put in here red coat for for Oglethorpe, General Oglethorpe. Now I let that dry. Now the last step in creating this cachet is to address the cachet to people who buy them from me, as well as to friends and relatives. And I'm going to address this last one on my typewriter. I'm going to address this one to my favorite cameraman, my grandson, Jeffrey Gundel from Ohio. Jeff T. Gundel, 3000 Pascal Drive, Beaver Creek, Ohio, 45324. Then I put a cardboard stiffener in here, and I paste the stamp on. This is a commemorative stamp that I buy from the post office. This is not the real one. I bundle these up. I may have a stack of 25, 30 of these envelopes, wrap them up in cardboard so they don't get messed up in the mail, and send them to the postmaster at the first day city, which has been designated by the post office. And they take care of mailing it to Jeff T. Gundel, 3000 Pascal Drive, Beaver Creek, Ohio.
Well, that's great.